Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. Once again, I have to apologize for how weird my voice may sound. I'm still in this makeshift studio, but I'm trying different setups to give you guys the best experience possible. So I really appreciate the understanding. Now let's get started with today's post. This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user Deleted. I, 27 female, am considering leaving my husband, 31 male, because of his toe. Sounds crazy, please read. Does sound crazy, I'm definitely gonna read it. I am so angry, seriously boiling, but I need to know if I'm overreacting. I love my husband so much. We have been married for 1 year and together for 5. Aside from this issue that is becoming a deal breaker, he's an amazing husband. He is kind, supportive, loving, understanding, funny, and smart. But he is not fulfilling his promise to me and has been dealing with an ongoing issue with his toe that has me so angry I am considering leaving him despite our relationship being otherwise great. To preface, my husband hates doctors. He never goes. He hasn't been in years. To make matters worse, he was supposed to have a colonoscopy at 30 because 3 people in his immediate family have died from colon cancer, but he hasn't because he thinks he's fine. Ironically, I see doctors a lot for health issues related to my kidneys that I have, and my husband has no problem bringing me to the ER when needed and constantly worries about me and is hyper vigilant about my health. He is healthy, fit, eats really well, barely drinks, etc. So he thinks his healthy lifestyle means he's exempt from checkups. To be fair, he is hardly ever sick. Only once has he had a cold in the 5 years we have been together. I have the worst immune system ever, so I'm constantly sick and he never catches it somehow. I told him that he has to have a colonoscopy before we have kids and have a checkup when we are married. He hasn't yet and brushes me off when I tell him he needs to. That alone started to piss me off a lot. Then this thing with his toe happened. A few months ago, he had an ingrown toenail. It has since become infected and it is still infected now. He tried to remove it himself and it got more infected. It has been like this since effing 3 months now. He's in so much pain, he can't go on runs now. It oozes pus and just looks really awful. I have to walk on eggshells around him because the slightest bump sends him keeling over in pain. I once stepped on his foot lightly and he freaked out because it hurt so much. I have begged him, screamed, cried, pleaded calmly and had multiple discussions with him about going to the doctor about this. He refuses because he doesn't want the doctor to remove a layer of skin around his toenail to make his toe look ugly. Right, like an oozing infected toe doesn't look ugly. I told him that is probably better than having no toe at all, but he firmly believes it'll go away on its own. It effing isn't. I gave up on asking him to go and decided to just let it fester and become necrotic and just take him to the hospital when he's too sick to resist and let him get his toe removed. I am so pissed off, it's his effing fault if his toe has to get chopped off. However, the reason I am raging about it now, after letting it go a few weeks ago, is because we went to visit his mother this weekend, who is a nurse by the way, and she begged him to go to the doctor. He refused her. We tried to have a super calm conversation with him tonight and even his stepdad, who is usually too chill to give his opinion on these matters, told him he should go to the doctor. He shut us down and left the room. And I was reminded of his a-hole stubbornness about the severe health issue and now I'm enraged at him again. I am doing my best to keep my mouth shut right now and I am sitting on the couch while he's in bed because I can't look at him or else I'll snap. We are supposed to go trekking in the middle of the effing desert on camels in the Middle East in about 7 weeks. I don't want him to get a life-threatening septic infection while we are removed from our healthcare service. Also, who the F is going to hike in the desert while he's in pain? I don't know what to do anymore. I am torn between cancelling his flight and going on the trip on my own because F him and his stupid infected toe that could put him at risk, or calling a doctor to come to our house and force him to get it inspected against his will. Or just letting it become septic because it's his decision and dealing with whatever comes from this. I am basically close to forcefully kidnapping him and bringing him to the ER for it. Aside from this issue, he is a wonderful, loving man who makes for the best partner. Basically, I think my anger comes from his stubbornness when it comes to health, and this toe infection is causing it to fester and grow. No pun intended. I really don't want him to die, and I have to raise our potential children on my own. I am seriously so fed up with his stubborn attitude about this that I am considering leaving and finding someone who respects my opinions and will see an effing doctor every once in a while for their own effing good. By the way, we live in a country with an amazing socialized healthcare, so he wouldn't even have a bill to foot. No pun intended again. Sorry. I am sorry, I am enraged right now and can probably not write coherently. Thanks for reading. What do I do? Wow, OP, your husband is really stubborn, and the worst thing of it is it's not just that his toe could get chopped off, is that he could actually die. Now, even though your husband does sound like a great guy because apparently you're really happy with everything else, he also sounds incredibly selfish, and that's the approach I would take in the final conversation before telling him that you're thinking about checking out. Now, most of you know that I don't like ultimatums because of the power imbalance they propose, and usually ultimatums are selfish. You either do what I want or we're done. Like, for example, you either propose to me now or I'm gone. But I think this case could appeal to be an exception to the rule because he's the one being selfish. He's not taking your feelings into account, the stress, the worry, the postponing and having a family. I think he has the right to be stubborn about things, but not about his health because that is something that impacts both of you. For example, refusing to eat cauliflower no matter what. Fine. Refusing to go to the doctor with an oozing infection, not fine at all. So yeah, I'd tell him that his attitude towards his health is stressing you out and makes you unhappy and fear the future of your marriage. But not because you're leaving, but because his idiocy might get him killed, and that is selfish and no way to live in a relationship. So he really needs to think if his health stubbornness is worth his marriage. And what do you guys think about this whole situation? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Humboldt77 says he needs to see a doctor immediately. I am also a dumb man. I did the exact same thing. I had an ingrown toenail that I tried to keep from getting too infected. Some days I even convinced myself it was getting better. Putting on shoes was agony. Kept on like that for 6 months. I kept it hidden from everyone until one day I banged my foot on a door and collapsed in tears in front of my family. After explaining what was going on and getting a lot of grief, a doctor had the nail cut out and cleaned up in under 30 minutes. The scary part? I had effing blood poisoning. They put me on all kinds of medications to prevent me from getting any further septic. I could have died because I was too dumb and stubborn to see a doctor about a freaking infected toenail. McCant says, I think this is a huge part of why men don't live as long as women. Women understand that their health affects others. We grow up hearing that we can get herpes at 15 and our baby is blinded at birth 10 years later, etc, etc. I think that's part of what's so infuriating, that this toe thing is stressing you and his mom and it's ruining your holiday, it's taxing your marriage, but he won't push through his fear, won't admit it's not just his toe and his silly decision to make. I mean, if you two decided to have babies, you'll undergo tons of medical stuff for the sake of the family. But I think you're right to tell him it's a doctor trip or cancel digit trip. It's not an ultimatum, it's just a natural consequence. Going is way too risky. People get bankrupt by medical emergencies in foreign countries. Gallon640 says, I would set up a doctor's appointment without his knowledge. Then say that you're taking him out to eat or something. And then stop in and tell him to come in and that it's medicine or something. And then when they call him, he'll have no choice but to go. And stand your ground. Sure, there might be an argument later, but at this point, you shouldn't care about what he wants, but what he needs, especially if it's been infected for 3 months. That can seriously mess someone up later on. And it might be worse than just an infected ingrown toenail now. And Sleep Fight says, quote, I am seriously so fed up with the stubborn attitude about this that I'm considering leaving and finding someone who respects my opinions and will see an effing doctor every once in a while for their own effing good. End quote. You should tell him this. You should show him this post. And Opie responds, I have tried. In fact, I just did. He says, okay, and thinks it's an empty threat and tells me it has nothing to do with me. Sad face. He also tells me I need to respect his opinions too, which just makes me more mad. Alright, well, the community gave OP very different opinions. I think most of them do apply, particularly that guy that says he had blood poisoning. That is dangerous. And we also learned that OP told him about what she wanted to do if she didn't fix this, and he just called her bluff. So now it's time that we move on to the update to see what happened next and how the story ends. But of course, before that, here's another one of my playlists for you guys to enjoy after this video. Now let's move on with that update. Hello, I am back about a week later with an update about my stubborn husband. Short version, he died. No, just kidding. Sorry, lol. He is absolutely fine. Thanks for all the advice. I really appreciated it. A lot of you guys made me laugh with your funny advice. Basically, after I posted the original question, I went off to bed. My husband followed but sensed I was irritated. He asked why and I explained to him why I was so frustrated with him. He told me that I was being too worried, etc. But I finally snapped. I told him I would leave if he didn't go to the doctor. He still said that was unfair and an empty threat. No one would leave their spouse over a toe. I told him I was tired of being nice, and if he didn't value his life, I shouldn't value him either. Then he got offended and wanted to sleep, so I channeled the spirit of my Soviet great-grandfather and went Stasi on his ass. I would let him fall asleep peacefully and wake him up the second I noticed he had fully started sleeping and ask him if he would go to the doctor for me. He said no, let me sleep. I repeated about 10 times. Let him fall asleep, turn on his reading light, wake him up and ask if he'd agreed to go to the doctor. I didn't care about being mean or cruel at this point. An hour of sleep deprivation torture won't kill him, but his toe definitely could. Finally, he broke down and started crying. He agreed he'd go with me first thing Monday if I stopped pestering him. We then started talking about why he is so afraid of doctors. He explained to me that he resents them for not saving his dad despite the horrible chemo he was put through, one of the people in his family who died of colon cancer. He understands this anger is irrational, so he suppresses it, but he never really got through grieving even after 10 years. Essentially, his anger towards doctors has resulted in a desire to avoid them irrationally himself. My husband focused on helping his younger siblings and mother heal, feeling it was his responsibility to take care of them as the oldest man in the family after his dad passed away. He never let himself deal with the grief and he's stuck in the anger phase. And I guess that anger is directed at doctors. We agreed he should go to grief counseling, regardless of the fact that his dad died a decade ago. We also agreed he should get a colonoscopy, even though the form of colon cancer his dad had supposedly isn't genetically inherited. So anyway, we went to the doctor and got his toe treated. Took all of an hour, including waiting time. He held my hand tightly the whole appointment, and I definitely annoyed the doctor because I went in there and did the talking while my husband essentially cowered in the corner. The doctor definitely thought I was too controlling of a wife, but I don't care cause his toe doesn't have to be chopped off and he doesn't have sepsis. All in all, it worked out. My husband even thanked me after we left for forcing him to go because his toe feels so much better now and he appreciated my caring for him. Thanks a lot for all your advice. Wow, sleep deprivation torture got the job done. Who'd have thought? But still, good for you, OP, for standing your ground and getting him to the doctor. It's a good thing it didn't have blood poisoning like that commenter, and he was able to get his toe treated, so now you guys can go on the holiday. He's also going to get that colonoscopy, which is very much needed, and grief counseling. So I'm going to call this a happy update win-win-win for everybody here. So here's wishing the best for the both of you. Thank you so much for sharing, OP, and take care. Now, let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance and is by user IC Maintenance 7041. Leave? No leave? Yes leave! I work as the sole IT guy in a firm with about 75 people that is part of a larger nationwide mother firm. Our local firm has an ongoing agreement with another local firm that we play backup for each other in case either one needs help, backup, knowledge sharing, or whatever. This has been the case since 2009. I have worked for this firm since 2002. Kind of an old hand if you want. We have this generous leave package that builds the longer we work here. A starter has 180 hours per year leave and someone with 20 plus years has 240 hours. I have that. Now, because we have this much leave, I'm of a mind not to be all too strict with the when and the how. I'm single and have no kids, so I'm happy to let others with kids take priority to handle school holidays. As such, I have always taken the bulk of my leave in September, October, and the rest on Fridays, counting back from New Year if that makes sense. The only rules we have regarding when and how we take leave are no more than 6 weeks together. You can't transfer more than 7 days to the next year, and leave must be approved, which it almost always is. Enter my big boss. As per usual, I put in my leave request for September, October, somewhere in May. This gets approved. Around August, we got news from our hardware vendor that they will be installing our new server cluster at the end of September. Not cool, but what are you gonna do? I talked it over with Big Boss and agreed to move my leave to February, March of the next year. I don't mind too much. He is happy, I am happy, and we go ahead and plan it all in. Enter my department head. Since I am a one-man department, but corporations are gonna be corporations, I have a department head that oversees my department along with a few others. Somewhere end of September, he walked into my office and told me when I was planning to take the bulk of my leave. I told him about the server cluster install and that my leave is moved to February, March. Now, one cannot be a department head or part of management and still be reasonable, right? So he told me that since I won't be taking my leave this year, it will be forfeited. I tell him I have an agreement with Big Boss, to which he states that he talked about this with Big Boss and that the arrangement won't work since he didn't approve it. I take my phone and call Big Boss. He states that indeed my leave will not be approved and can't be moved to next year. So I told him, okay, enter malicious compliance. I was pissed. Not just angry, but genuinely ready to murder someone pissed. So I took a half day and went home and mulled things over. With age comes wisdom, and I know not to make decisions when I am that angry. The next day, I go in and ask for a leave statement from our HR department that has a counter of all our leave and, more importantly, overtime. I had around 700 hours of overtime standing accrued over the years and 220 hours of leave. So I put in 5 weeks leave, 1 week overtime, 5 weeks leave, 1 week overtime, and so on till I landed in the first week of January. Then I put in the remaining overtime and landed at the end of February. Next to that, I sent in my resignation and 3 months notice, which I planned exactly on the last day of my leave. Not half an hour later, Big Boss and department head were at my desk asking me what gives. I told them that since the department head had told me I couldn't transfer the leave, I would be taking it this year. And since the agreement to move my leave was broken, I felt I didn't have another choice but to look for other work where agreements in fact were honored. I asked them what rule of the worker manuals regarding leave I had broken and if any, could they point it out. After the talk, I went home and the waiting game began. Big Boss called me the next morning on my work cell asking me to come in. Sorry, no, I'm on leave. Happy to make a pot of coffee if you want to drop by. So he drops by. Things get talked about. It seems his department head wasn't entirely upfront with him. Although he wasn't innocent either, and he wants to make things right. My 6-month leave stayed in place and he offered to match the offers I would get from other firms to keep me on board within reason. In conclusion, all in all, I still work for the same firm with a 15% wage increase. I don't do overtime anymore, neither does my laptop come home, and my work phone stays at work too. I still do my job to the best of my abilities, but at the end of the day, if my hours are done, I go home. The building can be on fire. If my clock is out, I am out the door. Now, my leave gets planned around my preference too. No more shifting around other people's leaves. Wow, OP, you certainly made a delicious lemonade out of those lemons, man. Good for you. And thanks for sharing, OP. Take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.